Welcome to the Improvement for Imbeciles podcast. I'm your host, Natalie, and this is where I share ways in which I'm getting my shit together so that you can get your shit together. Have you ever gotten a really good idea and you're like, I want to do this. Like, this is something I actually want to accomplish in life, whatever that thing is for you. And so you wait and you start to plan it out. You dream board, you journal, you manifest, whatever you choose to do. But over time, it's like this initial idea you had is suddenly fading out. You don't have the motivation to complete your tasks. You don't have the motivation to get back into the groove. You start doubting yourself. You start hyper-focusing on how you're being perceived. You almost give up on the idea altogether because that motivation that you had didn't actually last. You might look at people you deem as successful and go, how did they stay motivated? They didn't. You just have a short-sighted idea of success. You assume that motivation is what got them to that point, when in reality, it was discipline. They were devoted. When they didn't want to do it, they still did. And we always see this when it comes to New Year's resolutions, right? People will start their New Year's resolutions, they'll be super strong with them, and then all of a sudden they lose motivation because the idea of what they wanted to achieve was never rooted in reality. It was never something that was sustainable in the long run. Discipline is something not many people want to talk about because the word discipline is just very harsh. It's like, discipline, you know what I mean? Like, why do I have to be disciplined? Why do I have to be my own parent? It kind of gets me pissed off when I hear the word discipline. So in this video, I'm actually going to be changing the word disciplined to devotion. Because when you are devoted, you show yourself discipline, because it doesn't just take motivation to get you to your goal. You have to be so assured in this goal that you have, this vision for yourself, that you shut out everything, even your own self-doubts, even your own blocks of you getting in your own way. You shut all of that out and you just do it, because that's truly what this human experience is all about. It's about being devoted to something. It's about learning how to cope in a world that tells you that you shouldn't be devoted, that you shouldn't go after your goals, that you shouldn't dream. So the first thing I really want to get into is this framework that you are not your goal. And this sounds very simple. It sounds very obvious, but oftentimes we attribute our own self-worth with if we get a certain thing in our life, right? We lose motivation for our goals because we associate ourselves with our goal so much that if we don't get what we want, that we are not adequate, which is so backwards, but it's the world we've been conditioned in, right? When you think of Beyonce, you automatically think of her music. So when you're going into making an image for yourself or doing something creative, you obviously want it to reflect good on you. But at the same exact time, if you don't feel good about yourself, how is that going to reflect through your work? And something I've noticed with myself, like when you really start to go inward and focus on your inner world, it reflects in the way you go after your goals. And so the more I've validated that self-concept in private for myself, the easier it was for me to show up for myself in my own work and stay motivated without the external validation. Oftentimes when you have a low self-worth or self-concept of yourself, you'll downplay what you do because you don't think you're worthy. And so by separating myself from my work, it's allowed me to be myself in my creative efforts without thinking about what I'm getting from this, right? What am I getting from social media? What am I getting from posting these videos? Am I getting motivation or am I getting confirmation of who I am? And honestly, it's a little bit of both, like through sharing these things online, it's made me realize a lot about myself, but the only way I've allowed myself to share things is through doing that inner work and having that base of I am worthy and I am not what I post. And I know I'm using my own example of just like posting or being vulnerable on the internet, but you can do this with anything when it comes to art. Something I do is I make jewelry in my free time. And sometimes if a piece didn't turn out how I wanted it to, I'll feel like, oh, this was a waste of time. I'm not even good at making jewelry. You see how one experience of a desired outcome that I had versus the reality of what it was allowed me to start making assumptions about myself that were false. Me making one bad necklace doesn't mean that I'm not a good jewelry maker. It just means I'm doing something and I'm learning a craft. It's the same with anything. When you're learning a craft, there has to be times where you don't necessarily enjoy what you just made, but you can not allow it to affect your own self-concept. It doesn't mean that you're a failed artist. It just means that you need to practice. And so when it comes to people's New Year's resolutions, for example, let's say you're starting to go to the gym, right? You need to look at the motivation of why. Okay, I know this sounds very simple, but look into the motivation of why. Are you doing it to fit into some societal standard, or are you doing it genuinely for yourself? It's okay if it's both. Like, there's a balance of wanting external validation and validating your need to be seen, and also knowing that I'm worthy without this external validation. The motivation that you initially get when you have this vision of your life, this thing you want to achieve, is rooted in your imagination. But what actually gets you there is rooted in reality. What are your actions, and do they align with this thing? If the answer is no, you might not want this thing. You just want the idea of it. I'm going to say that again. You just want the idea of what you think you want. Do you actually want it? Because your actions are not aligning with it. There's a point when manifestation and dream boarding and all of these things that start the new year are not actually going to get you there. It's not going to get you there because your initial motivation was based on delusion. And so it all comes back to just having this internal knowing of who you are, in a sense, right? If you know the type of person you are is, I'm going to get motivated and then I'm going to get burnt out very fast, write down why you were motivated in the first place. That motivation was still based on a true dream you have. Like, when you're motivated for something, it's excitement. It's because you're in alignment. Whatever that thing is that just lights you up inside, that makes you feel happy, that makes you feel like, if I just had this one thing, right? You need to capture that moment. You need to write about it. You need to write down and visualize and really immerse yourself when you do have that motivation, because when that motivation is gone, you have to have the devotion to actually go through on your goals. You have to have the devotion to remember, okay, I don't feel it right now, but I know I felt it before and it'll come back to me. And sometimes it doesn't come back to you. And in that case, it's not what you actually wanted. The next thing I really want to talk about is the new trend on social media, or actually it's been around for a while, but it always comes back up around this time of the year when everyone's starting their New Year's resolutions. It's called the 12-week year, and it's essentially the idea that in 3 months you can plan out your life and change your life through your day-to-day habits. And I don't think this is inherently a bad thing. I think there's a lot of different ways that people can change their life, and if they're devoted enough, they can absolutely do that in the span of not just 3 months, but 2 weeks. It takes 2 weeks to form habits. But my main issue is that people overestimate what they can actually do. And I think there's healthy ways of doing the 12-week year, obviously, but I think for a lot of people, it doesn't actually end up working because, again, we overestimate what we can actually achieve in a short period of time. And because we haven't done real devotion to our craft, we want a simple solution. We want fast results. We want it to be done in 3 months. Life doesn't happen like that. Life has its own schedule. And a big part about being dynamic is, again, knowing yourself and knowing your limits. You have to know when you have to slow down. You have to know when you're pushing your limits. You have to know when you're about to be burnt out so that you can collect yourself. Sometimes it's not that you need to do more, it's that you need to appreciate what you're already doing. I want to say that one again. Sometimes it's not that you need to do more. It's that you need to appreciate what you're already doing. You don't see value in what you're already doing. Therefore, you're looking to everybody else. You're looking to, what's the next thing I can do? What's the new challenge I can do? These are all great tools, but they're not going to do anything for you if you are not devoted to yourself. If you don't know yourself enough and trust yourself enough to go after it, how are you going to get it? You're just going to set yourself up for failure and then be mad at yourself because it's a cycle of shame that you're in. You don't feel like you're worthy of it, therefore you're going to set yourself up for failure. When you finally choose to say, this goal doesn't define me, I'm literally just living and I'm going to be happy no matter what, you free yourself. And yeah, it's going to feel weird. It's going to feel uncomfortable looking at reality and going, this thing isn't working for me, but how can I allow myself to be in a flow state? How can I allow myself and open myself up to whatever this present moment is trying to teach me? Because that's all we have. We only have the present moment. There's no future moment. How the hell do you expect to get this imaginary future moment that you want when you can't even accept where you're at right now? It doesn't work like that. You'll get there, but you're not there yet because you're not being in reality. You're not looking at yourself right now. Another thing that's really difficult for me to deal with when it comes to discipline is the feeling of just like, I don't want to do this shit. You know what I mean? Like having that feeling of I know I should and I know I have it on my agenda, but I don't want to do it. And when you're in those moments, I think it's so important to just ask yourself, like, is this a non-negotiable for me? Because if it's a non-negotiable for you, like I need to do this thing, for example, you need to do your laundry, you need to go to the gym, you need to do this, you have to fucking force yourself. There's no way around it. Who else is going to do it? Actually, there's a lot of other people that are going to do it, and they're going to be more successful than you. I'm sorry. Sometimes that's the only thing that motivates you, is the idea that other people are doing what you can do with less talent, with less motivation, all because they don't care about how they feel in the present moment. They know it's a non-negotiable for them. They're devoted. Excuses are just problems later. Stop making excuses for yourself because they are just going to snowball. They are just going to get worse. The problem isn't going to go away. It's just going to be swept under the rug. And moving into my last main point for this podcast episode, there is a time and place to be result focused. When it comes to creative endeavors, yes, you do have to have deadlines, but you also have to learn how to have that balance. When it comes to your creativity, sometimes you're not going to have that spark and you can't wait on a spark to actually do the thing. You can't wait for motivation because motivation is unstable. It'll be here one day and it'll be gone the next. You simply just have to do it and you find motivation in the process. If you're just having fun, you're not thinking about what the result is going to be. You're not thinking about the outcome. For example, I have days sometimes where I just record videos and I end up editing the entire video and I don't like it. But I'm not mad that I did that. I'm just going, you know what? It's a learning experience. How could I do this better next time? Release yourself from the expectation that you have to be perfect. You are not always going to be perfect, and that is normal. And I know a lot of people are like, no, duh. But at the same exact time, we put so much pressure on ourselves to perform that we forget to just be. We forget to just create. You'll never know unless you try, but simultaneously, if you don't know yourself, you're going to sabotage your goal for yourself before you even started it. Because you don't know what you wanted from the beginning, you just thought you wanted it. And so moving on, I'm going to talk about actual ways to keep yourself on track to be devoted to your goal. Right? Number one is to write out that mission statement that I've been talking about in almost every single one of my little videos or podcasts I've done, right? Be very clear on who you are. And this comes with shadow work. This comes with going through these things and actually figuring out, what do I want out of this, right? When you have an idea, write a detailed description of that motivation you have for that idea, because you need to look back on it when you don't have motivation. You have to go back to that why. If you have that initial why of like, I'm doing this because XYZ, XYZ, in those moments where you don't want to do that shit, you bring yourself back to the initial inspiration you had. Number three, rely on people sometimes. A lot of people get external validation wrong in the fact that they either rely way too much on it or they assume that they shouldn't rely on it at all and they go completely inward with themselves. It's okay to want that compliment. It's okay to want people noticing your efforts. It's okay to care about what other people think because you're never going to get rid of that part of yourself. It's in our human nature. We are all social creatures. We all need to confirm that we are on the right track, and we have to have a sense of community. The problem is when we let that sense of community dictate the entirety of who we are, and we deny ourselves because a community rejects that part of ourselves. We cannot do that if we want true growth and actual acceptance of ourselves. There's a balance of breaking outside the box and doing something different and not giving a fuck what others think, and also being like, hey, I could really use a compliment today. I can really use some people actually acknowledging what the fuck I'm doing and how much effort I'm putting into this. It's normal to feel that way. Don't deny yourself that reality, or else you start to see the world like, I must be like everyone else, or I'm not like anyone else. You see? It isolates you either way. Number four, know when to not care. Know when to be like, actually, this is something I'm doing, okay? Your opinion doesn't matter in this, and I'm gonna keep doing what the fuck I'm doing because who asked? Who asked? Sorry, y'all. I get silly sometimes, but like sometimes it's seriously like, who asked you? And I genuinely want you to ask these questions to yourself, because oftentimes it's not other people that are saying these things directly to you. Like, yes, you might get a comment online that's saying some BS or whatever, but people online say anything. Like, start talking back to that part of your brain that always doubts yourself. Like, be like, who asked you? Who asked that part of my brain? I'm talking about the part of my brain that actually enjoys who I am. Pick your brain apart. Argue with the part of your brain that tells you to care what everyone thinks. Okay, this might sound weird, but genuinely, sometimes it's not a person in real life saying, oh, well, I don't think you should do this. Well, sometimes that happens. Okay, yeah, sometimes that happens. Sometimes you do have to be like, I'm going to do whatever the fuck I want. Sorry. But most of the time, it's you and your own self-beliefs, limiting beliefs that are echoing inside your head that are limiting you because you assume, you project this idea of what you think of yourself onto people and think that that's what they're thinking, when in reality, they're not even thinking about you. You get what I mean? They're not thinking about you. It's like the dynamic of like, nobody cares, but also nobody cares. You know, it's so beautiful to think about it that way, because when we finally let go of this idea that we have to always perform or be something that we're not, we can finally just allow ourselves to enjoy life and enjoy the creative process. If you don't believe in what you're already doing, how do you expect to add more and have that gain a better outcome? Your outcome is going to be solely based on, again, other people approving of your plans, when that's none of their business. It's your business to figure yourself out before you broadcast your ideas to people. Whether that's a creative idea, a business idea, whatever it is, you need to get right with yourself first. You need to make sure what you're doing aligns with your values and who you actually are. Don't allow the illusion of the new year to remove you from your past self. What you did still matters. Who you used to be still matters. It's only been a week, ma'am. You can't just move past that. You have to analyze it. If you don't like who you are now, how the hell do you expect to like yourself when you do all of these things and add all of these things? Be in the present moment, allow yourself to face reality, and then add more things on once you figure that out. This is speaking from personal experience, okay? I've tried to overwhelm myself and it just ended up very bad, okay? Again, this is where I share ways in which I'm getting my shit together so that you can get your shit together, okay? And the last thing, I really want you guys to look into your relationship with discipline, specifically how you were taught discipline growing up. Because when you identify how the structures that you were raised in have affected you, who you are today, you can really find a strategy that works for yourself. Because people who are raised with less structure might be a little bit more lenient when it comes to letting their creative side flow. You know, they don't really care. They just do what they want, right? Whereas if you grew up with a lot of structure, or you couldn't do certain things, or even more so, you grew up with both sides where it's like sometimes you were structured, sometimes you weren't structured, you might have a lot of restrictions put on yourself where you don't feel like you're good enough, you don't trust yourself because you weren't given the tools in order to correctly discipline yourself. It's like due to the way you were raised, you feel incapable in certain ways. And I think it's so subjective from person to person that it's super important to just look into that for yourself, because my strategy of viewing discipline as devotion really stemmed from me feeling so scared of discipline, because it's not really a nice word. It just feels like you have to do this. And it's like, that's not what life is about, you know? Life is about flow, in my opinion. We need structure, but even more so, we need chaos. If it weren't for uncertainty, how would we allow our creativity to flow? Because creativity as a whole is not something that can be confined. It's something that needs to be expanded. It's something that needs to flow. It's something that doesn't have structure. It has limits, but those limits are decided by us. We choose when to let our creativity flow and when to bring it back in. And that's so beautiful. That's so beautiful, okay? With that being said, you guys, thank you guys so much for tuning into this episode of Improvement for Imbeciles. Thank you guys for 30,000 subscribers on my YouTube channel. You guys are insane. I'm just so grateful to have this community. And with that being said, you guys, go follow my social medias. I always forget to plug my social medias, but it's at My Life as Etched on Instagram and then Natalie Etched on TikTok. Let me know down in the comments what other things you want to see from me. And with that being said, tune in next week. Bye, you guys.